guess we'll continue with the class here. As you know, we're going over the book of Revelations and the letters of the 7 churches. The regular interpretation is they were just letters to churches giving them advice. But we found out there's much more than this. These are 7 stages to enlightenment. First stage, the disciple figures out that he doesn't want to listen to the outward authorities, so he's starting to listen to the inward. And then the second stage, he kind of deviates from the path. He starts listening to his lower self instead of the higher, and he gets a message to come, hey, you got to come back and center on the higher self, not the lower self. Okay, and then in the third stage in Pergamos, he tries to do what is right, but he keeps screwing up, and he does more harm than good. He turns into idealist. He wants to help everybody, but he finds out helping people isn't as easy as just deciding to help them. You have to use good judgment. And then he goes to the fourth stage in Thyatira, where he has a lot of hindrances to his greater works, and he gets caught up in subtle authorities that still take him away from the inner, and so he's told to, come back on them. And he doesn't quite get back there, and then Thyatira, he kind of starts to get discouraged and wonders, where is God? God has forsaken me. And he goes through kind of the dark night of the soul. And as he's going through this, he finally sees the light at the end of the tunnel and kind of comes back and senses the true soul again and begins to center himself on it. And this is where we're at in Philadelphia. And now for the first time in these first 4 steps, he's kind of like Hercules. Remember the story of Hercules? His initial labors, he kept screwing up and making a lot of mistakes. And this is what the disciple does. He makes so many mistakes that he goes through that dark night and figured he screwed up so bad that God doesn't even want him, And but that's all part of the journey. And now finally in Thyatira, he begins a focus on the soul, the true soul, instead of outward authorities, instead of tricky authorities, subtle authorities, and instead of the lower desires, he begins to really focus for the first time and hold his mind steady in the light. And this is where he's at now, and he finally gets some positive things from his soul. In the past, he keeps telling, his soul keeps saying, hey, you're screwing up and you got to do this, you got to do that. He finally gets to a point where his soul gives him a little bit of a pat on the back after all that he's been through. And so we move to the beginning of this. The 6th stage is called Philadelphia. Now, and it starts out this way. And to the angel of the church of Philadelphia write, these things saith he that is holy, he that is true, he that hath the key of David, that openeth and no man shutteth, and shutteth and no man openeth. So the seeker just about give up in the 4th stage in Sardis, or maybe even did for a couple lifetimes. But then, like the prodigal son, he came back and he started on the path again. And Philadelphia comes from the Greek Philadelphos, which means brotherly love, or one who loves his brother. And this is symbolic of the idea that the disciple has finally centered himself somewhat in the soul, so he has a sense of what true love is and a sense of following where love will take him. So here he rises finally for the first time, he rises above self-pity, and he learns to see the glass half full rather than half empty. And that's a big switch in perspective, because how many people do you know see the glass half full all the time? We know a lot of people like that. Now, people in this group, I think most of the people here are see the glass half full type of people. We have a good group here, and so um, this is what we're looking for in our achievement is a change of attitude, where we look and see the good rather than the bad. And this also applies in how we see our brothers and sisters. We look and see our brothers and sisters, we can look and see their faults and see everything that's wrong with them, or we can see their beauty and the Christ within themselves and the perfection that they can be. We can see the glass half full or half empty. And actually, when we look at our brothers, we should see that the glass is completely full because within them is the Christ center, just like it's within you. And the thing that blocks it is actually the physical body is kind of like itself is a tremendous barrier between us and the higher vibrations. And so the barrier of the body itself is an enormous obstacle that we have to eventually overcome. So after he weathers the dark night of the soul, he finds himself still standing in the strength of the God within, and again he hears an inner voice, and it tells him that the Christ that is within him is holy and is true. And that's interesting. We read these scriptures, and it sounds like there's an outer Christ speaking, but really what is speaking is the inner Christ. The inner Christ within you is telling you, hey, yeah, you made mistakes on the surface, but that's just the surface. Deep within yourself is the Christ, and it's holy and true. What's the significance of him being told this? What do you think? Is it natural for us to, like, when we make mistakes, we condemn ourselves and we don't think we're good enough? Let's have somebody comment on that. Curtis, you've always got a comment. What do you think? You think that's a big problem for disciples? They don't think they're good enough or worthy enough?
Oh, I hear that all the time from people on the path. Oh, you know, I'll never make it to the top. I do a lot of wrong things, and I'm not good enough, and I'm not worthy enough. And I'm thinking, man, that's a bunch of hooey. You know, you just take a second and be still and know that you are connected with that holy place, and they just feel like they're temporarily disconnected. But yeah, I hear that.
So
But you know,
yeah,
the truth is we can, you know, we're like a bubble rising from the ocean floor. We're all going to make it to the top where there's a greater measure of light. Sometimes it feels like you're a little distracted, but it's only temporary.
Yeah, so this is encouraging. The disciple goes along and he's made all these mistakes in the first 4 steps, and he kind of maybe has a tendency to condemn himself, and the inner voice reminds him, hey, this is your true self speaking, which is holy and true. Don't forget about that. Focus on this, not the outward self, which makes mistakes, but the inward self, which is perfect. It's holy and true.
Well, your inner Christ never gives up on you. That's the thing to remember.
Yeah, exactly. Because the inner Christ is the real you.
It's real. Yeah, it's the real you.
Now, why would you give up on you?
Right.
Yeah. Now, from within, then, he hears the master speak again. He says, he that hath the key of David, that openeth and no man shutteth, and shutteth and no man openeth. The key of David. Okay, so your inner Christ, your inner self has the key of David. What is that?
Well, David, I think the key of David slew Goliath, which I think could represent conflict in your life. And he held the keys to Jerusalem, and the word Jerusalem means city of peace. So it's possible that at this point he has eliminated conflict in his life and has entered into a greater measure of peace that he will not depart from.
Right. So what he's really saying, he's saying, listen, your inner self, your true self has a key of David. You can slay the Goliath out there. You can, you have the key to open the door to peace, the city of peace.
Right.
The great peace is available. You have the key to open the door or shut it, depending on what you decide. So you might as well keep deciding for the light so that you can have this great peace that passes all understanding. Then he says to him, I know thy works. Behold, I've set before thee an open door, and no man can shut it. For thou hast a little strength, and hast kept my word, and has not denied my name. So here he's got some praise coming because, you know, he went through these 4 steps, struggled, hit the dark night of the soul, thought he was deserted, and then he comes back, focuses on the light, and he says, you know, I've seen everything you've gone through. He says, I know your works. And now before you, because you have risen above all these things, there's an open door, and no one can shut it. No outward authority can come and say, you don't deserve it. It doesn't matter what any outward authority might say, because they have no power to shut the door between you and the inner God. Okay. So the seeker, he's entered through the gates of Philadelphia. He has learned the lessons of unselfish love and finds this open door set before him. The door to the soul is open, and no outside authority can decree that, hey, you got to listen to me, not what you imagine inside your head there, you know. And this is what we get from the outside authorities, that if you disagree with me, you're disagreeing with God, because I know what God thinks about stuff. So you got to listen to me. Well, he has this key of David now, so he can just ignore these outward authorities. Now, the reasons he's able to stay in contact with the soul, he says, is three things are given in this verse. It says, first of all, it says he has a little strength. In other words, his soul isn't saying to him, hey, you arrived and you're full-blown enlightened being. He isn't giving him that big of a pat on the back. He's saying you've got a little strength. In other words, you just don't know how much you got coming if you continue on the path. You just, it's beyond what you can imagine. You think you've got a lot of strength, you think you've overcome a lot, but you just have a little strength, but that's good. Even though don't let me take that away from you. Strength comes from the Greek word dynamis, which literally means inherent power. So you have an inherent power that nobody can take from you. And the second thing he's told him, he says, you've kept my word. And my word is revealed through your inner soul. The word of God comes from your inner self. And when you hear that still small voice and keep it, then you get some sign of approval from your inner self. It just feels good. You get kind of a pat on the back, and that pat on the back comes as a feeling within that you're just headed, making a step in the right direction. Okay. And the third, he has not denied my name. How would you deny the name of God? Any ideas on that?
Well, again, you're looking at outward authority. And if you get a prompting from your inner Christ and you go against it, then you're denying his name. But if you stay fast and true to the word of God within you, then you're not denying his name.
Right. And if you also at this point pick up a purpose and maybe things that you're supposed to be doing to fulfill that purpose. And if you work toward that purpose that you has been revealed to you, you're working to magnify the name of God. And if you ignore your purpose, then it's a denial of the name also. And good points are Curtis that adds to that. Okay, next he says, behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee. Now, this is very interesting scripture, and we have an interpretation we're going to present that's far different than anything that I've ever seen written. But first of all, who are these false authorities of the synagogue of Satan? These are the ones, of course, who the outward authority, the beast that claims to be the voice of God. Preachers and prophets, political leaders saying, listen to me because I am the highest authority that you have. Even an atheist has some highest authority that he listens to. Maybe somebody idolizes, maybe a political leader or whatever, but we all have our outward authorities. And and they are the synagogue of Satan. Satan means adversary. So the adversaries of light are the outward authorities that take the place of the true God that speaks to you from your inner core. These are the synagogue of Satan that say they are Jews and are not. Okay, well, the Jews are the tribe of the main tribe of Israel that lived in Jerusalem. There's, as a side note, there's a lot of conspiracy theories around the fact that some of these white supremacist groups, that the true white supremacists, not the ones that the media says are, but the real Aryan nations people think that the Jews have been were replaced before the time of Christ by non-Jews, and the real Jews were somewhere else. And so that's their argument, which is kind of which I don't think matters one way or another, because all the races have a mixture to them. The Jews in Jerusalem were probably not purebred by any means, and the Jewish race today probably still contains quite a bit of a mixture in it. All the races have a mixture in them as far as that goes. But as far as interpretation goes, that this is on a more spiritual level, where there are people that make claims to be spokesmen for God or the true children of Israel, and are not, but lie, and I will make them to come worship before thy feet. So they will worship before the feet of the enlightened. How will that take place?
Well, you know, back in the days of Jesus, the ones, if you were to take it from a literal interpretation, that would have been the Pharisees and the Sadducees, who sat in high positions claiming to be descended from the true lineage of God, but were not. You know, they were the false teachers that Jesus rose against.
Okay, and how in the world could these people come to worship at Jesus's feet? The people that put him to death, he says, people that are the adversaries to the light, will wind up worshiping at the feet of the people that they persecuted. How will
Well,
that
they
happen?
could reincarnate for one thing.
Exactly. That's exactly what will happen, is that the people that persecuted Jesus, they will be reborn, and they have been reborn as Christians probably in a number of lifetimes, and they are probably putting people to death that don't worship Christ now. They were, I wouldn't be surprised if some of the conquistadors were reincarnations of the Jews that that were against Jesus.
You mean the Inquisition?
The Inquisition also, as well as the conquistadors.
That was the big thing.
Yeah, the Inquisition. And these people worshiped at the feet of Jesus. Now, the same thing happens with others. We take people that were against the revolution that established the United States, and were against George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, all the founding fathers. The people that were against them, they're now reborn, and now their heroes are George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, all these founding fathers, and they're promoting the Constitution. And now they're worshiping at the feet of the people they opposed at that earlier time. Same thing with like Abraham Lincoln. Over 2/3 of more than half of the nation really opposed Abraham Lincoln. And some of his greatest enemies right now are reborn, and they think that Abraham Lincoln is the greatest president we've ever had. And some of them are probably writing books about him. So this is interesting. So we read this in this light. He says, these people that are the synagogue of Satan, he says, behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee. Okay. So these people that put Jesus to death and were against it, they were reborn, and now they know that God loved the Christ when he walked the earth. They feel that in their hearts at least. Now, does that mean they're perfect now? No, probably for a few lifetimes they'll keep making the mistake all over us. The people that were reborn as Christians, they engulf the idea that Jesus represented the love of God. Yet when they show the love of God in their own way by putting heretics at the stake, they make the same mistake all over again. So those people that love Jesus, so they said, but that put Joan of Arc to death, now they're reborn at a time where they think Joan of Arc is just wonderful. And so they worship at her feet now, just like it says. So that's an interesting interpretation that I believe is quite valid, but also quite an interesting way to look at it. And when you look at history, you can really see how this happens, that some of the greatest people in history were persecuted and by the authorities, the powers that be. And then after a period of time passes, they're no longer an enemy of the state, they're the hero of the state and worshiped by the state, worshiped by the type of people that tried to destroy them in a past life.
There's another scripture about reincarnation, and every eye shall see him. I think it says, even they which pierced him.
Right.
So those people would have to be reborn into our dispensation.
Right. If those who see him when he comes again are those who pierced him, how could they do that without being reborn?
Right.
Good point.
Thought you'd like that.
Because thou hast kept the word of my patience, he says, I will also keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world to try them that dwell upon the earth. And because the seeker has performed well, his soul contact that he now has, he has some pretty good soul contact, may not be perfect, but it's better than it's ever been. And it's going to guide him out of temptation. So the next question to ask is, what is this temptation that is so great that is going to come upon all the world to try them that dwell upon the earth. What would that be? The seeker, what he does is he helps to establish some great work. Everybody that's really in the light seeks to establish a work of light somehow. They may not be an Abraham Lincoln or a Galileo or whatever, or a Mother Teresa, but they will be involved in helping establish some great work, either as a main initiate or a helper or supporter in some way. Okay. Then what happens? Say you were a follower of Jesus in his day. You weren't an apostle. You were just kind of a regular guy, and you were a follower, and you believed that Jesus was a great teacher, and you supported him, and you weren't written down in any book or anything, but you were just a really good supporter, and you did everything you could to help the work. Okay, what is your temptation? The one that's going to come upon all the world. Then you're reborn. Say you're reborn in the days of the Inquisition. Okay, and everybody's telling you we need to weed out all these heretics. Okay, this is the hour of temptation. You were a supporter of Jesus and his true works. Now, these heretics are really represent the truth a lot more than the authorities that are persecuting them. You're going to be tempted to go along with the powers that be. Okay. The only way you're going to rise above the powers that be is by soul contact with your inner Christ. And this is what it promises us, is that we will be saved from this, delivered from this hour of temptation. And when the temptation comes where the disciple is reborn and all the outward authorities are saying, hey, we need to go after and crush these rebels. And the rebels are actually the ones on the side of light. This is the temptation. And the only way you're going to see what is true is by the soul. And the soul will reveal, hey, the rebels are the good guys. You don't want to fight against them. And he gets this message. And this is the deliverance from the hour of temptation. Because if he gives into the temptation, he has to be reborn and go through a lot of karma all over again. But if he's delivered, then he can keep moving forward. And this is the deliverance that he's promised. What do you think?
That's like
yeah.
That's like the 5 virgins whose lamps were filled with oil. Remember that parable? And the 5 were not, and the oil represented the spirit and of truth and light, and they had it. They were able to endure the dark night, but those who didn't have it went out into the night to try to get it in a hurry and couldn't find it.
Yeah, and you want to look at, well, what's the hour of temptation today? Now, I know what it was for me and Curtis. We were in the same situation. We were in the Mormon church, which was very authoritative. And it told us who the biggest enemy was those apostates. Those apostates, they are the enemy, okay? And we have to wipe them out and do everything we can to be against it, okay? And for a while, Curtis and I kind of went along with that until we received what from our souls, Curtis? What did we receive on that?
Well, we received the inner light that we had to separate ourselves from that outer voice of authority, and we were up against tremendous opposition. All my friends called me and wrote letters and said, hey, if you leave the church, which we didn't leave the church, we were kicked out of the church for actually doing no wrong.
Yeah.
But but if you leave the church, we'll never speak to you again. I had a stack of letters like that from all my friends and associates and brothers that abandoned me and said, well, we just can't be with you anymore. And then as we separated from that pull, we began to it was like the shackles that were taken off our shoulders, and we were able to see that we were really more liberated than they were.
Right. And we also saw that the people that the authorities were against were more enlightened than the authorities were.
Yeah.
Just like in the Inquisition, the heretics were more enlightened than the people that were trying to put them to death. Now, fortunately for us, the church didn't have power to put us to death. Now,
They would have if they could have.
in my excommunication, one of the judges the counselors came up to me that judged me, and he says, you know, it's too bad we can't put people like you to death like the old days. You know?
People do that.
Yeah.
Brotherly love. Huh?
Yeah, I think they would have put us to death if they could have.
JJ, this is true. This is a joke.
No, it's true.
You gotta be kidding me.
Yeah, one of them came up to me and said that to me. He wished they could put people like me to death.
JJ, did you look him in the eye and tell him that he did in a past life?
Yeah, that would have been an interesting answer.
That's funny. Yeah, well, we kind of laughed at them. We didn't mean to mock them, but they could just feel that their words had no power over us anymore. You know, they just, okay, who do you guys think you are?
Yeah. Anybody else have experiences where they kind of had to, were tempted to condemn somebody and then found out the ones that they were supposed to condemn were really not that bad after all? We're kind of in that situation with people who don't get vaccinated are condemned by almost everybody. And whether you believe in it or not, we shouldn't be condemning them, even if you think they're wrong. So we should be always respect people's free will. And the beast doesn't respect free will at all. He wants to control and isolate and condemn. And when we're reborn in the right situation, we will be tempted to condemn where we should not condemn. And the only way out of that temptation is from the inner guidance. You'll receive a message, hey, you know, that person isn't so bad. Don't worry, don't condemn him, don't attack him. That's not the way of the Christ. And or maybe a passage of scripture will come to your mind. You know, love your brother as yourself, your neighbor as yourself. Maybe something like that will just come. Okay, any more comment on that?
Yes. I think that what you experience is the mentality of a cult. A cult, C-U-L-T, not a cult, but a cult. And then
unfortunately, that cult mentality reaches up in a lot of mainstream stuff also.
Yes, and they get tunnel vision. And once you are in it, you don't see it. You have to step out to realize what it is. And it happened quite often. I have some friend who Mormon also, and as they experience the same thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's interesting.
Go ahead.
As we walk through the valley of the shadow of COVID, we will fear no evil. For my peace will be with us for the rest of our days. My dad called, and I just haven't felt a strong need or desire to get a vaccination for a number of reasons. But my dad called and said, if you want to see me one more time, you'll get a shot. I said, well, I always test negative. I've come and seen you before. Well, not this time. This time, if you ever want to see your dad again, you'll get a shot and do as I say. I said,
That's
you know,
surprising. That's surprising even from your dad, who's kind of he reminds me a lot of Andy Griffith. Just think of Andy Griffith and that's his dad's personality.
he watches
Or
Matlock
Matlock,
every night.
the Matlock character,
Yeah.
not so
So
much the
anyway,
other guy.
yeah, he likes to watch Matlock. He kind of reminds me of Andy Griffith that way, but I'm thinking, you know, his words just had no power over my decision to do or not to do. And I told him that. I said, well, I have 4 test kits here that I got from the government, and the government knows all, as you know, and I'll get a test before I come and see you. And if I'm negative, you don't have anything to worry about. And he didn't have anything to say about that. And then the next day he called back and said, well, I think it'd probably be okay if you come.
Oh, that kind of sounds like him. He comes across kind of hard nosed, and then he'll soften up later, from my experience with him. Yeah, he's done that to me several times in my knowing of him. So he's got a soft side and a hard side, but the soft side kind of prevails, fortunately.
He does.
So how long really took you guys to be excommunicated from your church?
Well, from the time we first started raising some hell, just a couple months.
Oh,
From the time, well, what
because it seems like
happened is I wrote this little paper. It was fairly innocent paper, but it disagreed with the current prophet.
Mhm.
And I give it to Curtis and told him not to show it to anybody, but then he went and showed it to a bunch of people.
Okay,
And
well,
that
the title
started
of the
chain
article,
reaction.
the title, I got to interrupt you. The title of the article was Eternal Progression. And see, there are a couple different trains of thought. One is there are 3 kingdoms, and you can progress within the telestial, terrestrial, or celestial kingdoms, but you can't move out. You can't go from the telestial to the celestial. And Joe's argument was, of course you can. You know, you go from the 2nd grade to the 3rd grade, you know, and then he used this, found this scripture that says, and there are kingdoms above the celestial. So, you know, I mean, it really made sense that they were out of line. And then there was Melvin J. Ballard, he was another apostle, and they just had different opposing doctrines even within the church. And what got me in trouble was I was teaching a Sunday school class, and the kids wanted to know what happened to the wicked when they died. And I said, well, it's by the wicked that the wicked are punished, according to the Book of Mormon, and they'll have to come back and be punished in the flesh. And the kids thought, well, that makes a lot of sense. So they got to be reborn. And I said, yeah, they'll have to be reborn. And they went and told their parents I was teaching reincarnation. And that's what got me in trouble. That, and then I showed them Joe's article on
Yeah,
eternal
plus you made a
progression.
bunch of copies of that article and passed it around. And that pretty much sealed your doom also.
I might have made a couple.
Yeah, that's what you told me anyway.
Well, I probably did. I can't, you know, it was back in 78.
Yeah.
But, yeah, well, I was so on fire with the idea of reincarnation. Remember, I was born, died in the wool, true blue Mormon, and reincarnation was a doctrine of devils. And there I got a spiritual witness about it, so I couldn't be still. And I kind of cast my pearls and got in trouble.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just a simple article on eternal progression, and there was nothing in there that was anti-scriptural or anti anything.
Okay, to sum this up then, so think of your own lives is who has been demonized to you by the authorities? Who have the authorities in your life told you these are the ones you need to oppose? And have you found out from your inner guidance that these people that you were told are really bad people maybe aren't so bad after all? And all of us have had that happen where we have authorities that tell us to demonize the other people. Now, politics has really gravitated this way. It used to be religion a lot. Now, in the political world, you have all kinds of people being demonized. So we look at them and we say, now, are these people really bad people? Am I just thinking they're bad because everybody tells me they're bad? And so we need to, when fingers are pointed at individuals or groups as being the representatives of Satan right here on the earth type of thing, we need to check with our inner self. What does the Christ, the inner Christ, say about these people? Maybe they are not so bad. Maybe they're just people struggling just like yourself, trying to do their best. And so this is the temptation that comes upon all the world that we have to avoid. And then he says, behold, I come quickly. Hold fast that which thou hast, that no man can take thy crown. Okay, in other words, you've achieved a little bit. You got the soul contact, and you're going to have some protection against this temptation to point fingers and demonize the saints, demonize the lights. And if you listen to your inner voice, you'll be protected. And I come quickly. In other words, the voice of the soul will come in an instant. The Course in Miracles calls this the holy instant. The holy instant is a place beyond time and space where you get an instant revelation, where you get an awareness of certain principles or certain truths. And he says, hold fast that which you have. And this is what we have to do. Once you made a little progress, if you don't hold it fast, it can just slip away real easy. And so we have to realize the progress that we've made and hold on to it so that no man can take your crown. And we'll leave it off for there. And I'll just read the next verse here and to contemplate, and then we'll talk about that next week. Him that overcometh will I make a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall go no more out. And I will write upon him the name of my God, and the name of the city of my God, which is the New Jerusalem, which cometh down out of heaven from my God, and I will write upon him my new name. Amazing how much is taught in a few words in the symbolism of this book, beautiful book. And any comments or questions before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I was actually excommunicated from Stell, Illinois. And the reasoning behind it was I had become a publicly elected mediator or ombudsman, as they would say, which means we had no court system, we had no police. If you had a disagreement with a member of the community, you'd come to a mediator, they would take you and sit you down together. And I won the very first case that ever happened in that town. The administrator, the head administrator, president of Stell Industries, which owned all the property and buildings, was kicking a guy out that was running an apartment from them because he couldn't pay his rent. But he couldn't pay his rent because they couldn't pay him.
Wow.
And I sat down with the president and the complainant, and I had him tell us a story. And I said, now listen, this is out here in the country. If you date a girl in the nearby town, by the next day, everybody in the entire county knows it. I said, now, what would happen if this story that I just heard here got out to the group and to the surrounding community? They'd all, and it's like, what would they think of that? And the president right then and there said, okay, we won't make him pay his rent until he gets paid. And almost immediately after that, the founder of the community said, "We can't have you here. You're too
Was
influential."
was that Richard?
Yes,
Yeah,
he
okay.
wanted me out because I wasn't taking anything from administrators. They had no fear. He's like, "Man, that's my right there. That's my calling. You know, don't let these people get away with it. Don't let them run your life. You know, you got to make your own judgments. If you don't like it, you leave. You know, whatever. But you know, for having too much influence, people listen to me where they wouldn't listen to the president of Stell Industries or whatever. You know, they recognized me as a revolutionary in their eyes. It was almost like, you know, Saint Rick, you know, get on your steed, you know, and save us, kind of thing. And it was like, didn't faze me a bit. You know, it's like within 2 weeks I was gone. I left the whole
Yeah,
state.
and what's funny is that group was kind of pinpointed as a cult that was rejected by society, and then within the group was individuals rejected on a similar basis.
Yeah, and I'm still friends with a good many people from up there, and
Oh,
they're
yeah?
all over the country.
Does the group still exist?
Well, the community does, and people live there, and they have a factory. Two different. They have a injection molded plastics factory, and they have a woodworking factory. You know, so they have industry there. The surrounding community knows the people and all that. It's very friendly, you know. And but the town's still there.
Oh,
Richard's
That's
not though. He passed away.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, he was
It's almost like
character.
you have to be excommunicated with from some group or some force as part of your initiation.
Yeah, it kind of heightens your awareness of everything once something you respected throws you out.
I
It sure
accepted it.
does.
I accepted it pretty well. I mean, it was just okay. End of that adventure. What's next? And actually, I traveled from there. We went down to Louisiana. A friend of mine from the group actually wanted to tag along and be like my, you know, Batman and Robin or whatever. It's like I had friends that we went down and we lived in his hometown from where he was from, and then from there, God, I've been all over the darn country. But we're still friends. He's on my Facebook friends, and he's still into some nice things, you know.
Very
my
good.
my time is getting pretty precious because I got friends all over the world and they want to talk and they want to see me, you know. So we do these video chats and phone calls. It's like literally I'm always talking to people.
Okay, well, nice group today. Oh, we got to check the football scores here to find out what's going on there too.
I know it. We got to go check them out.
Anybody know what the score is?
Tied up.
21-21.
21-21?
Yeah, Adam's
Wow,
watching
it's turned
football
into quite a
during
game, huh?
One for the Bengals. Go Bengals.
Well, the Bengals may take it after all. Who knows? Huh. Anyway, what are they in the
JJ.
fourth quarter?
Yeah, 7 minutes left.
7 minutes?
JJ, happy
Okay.
birthday.
Oh, thanks. Thanks.
Okay. And
Yeah,
see
it's
you guys.
actually be my birthday next Sunday, so you can wish me happy birthday next week.
Happy birthday,
Yes, no
JJ.
problem.
Adam, are you watching the game?
Yeah, he
I,
is.
I always,
Don't you
I
know
always
that's
was
don't you know
watching
that's
something
sacrilege?
during church.
He's multitasking.
When I was in the church, I had the earbuds on and
That's
a
funny.
little Walkman.
Yeah, I could tell you funny stories about it, things I did in the church.
Yeah.
We used to order pizza to the church and charge it to the bishop.
Oh, really? Wow,
Yeah.
that's something like my group would have done if they would have thought about it.
They didn't have pizza order delivery back
Yeah, I
then in your
don't think we
neighborhood.
didn't have pizza delivery in Letha, or somebody might have thought of that. I mean, everybody I associated with in that little town of Letha church was kind of rebel in there thinking.
Put peppermint in the sacrament water.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's one of them put soap in the sacrament water.
Oh, that's bad. That's gone too far.
Yeah, that was even below our standards of our inner group.
Yeah. Below us. That's really reaching down.
But
Good class, Joe.
yeah, good to see you guys, and we'll see you next Sunday at 10:30 in the morning or 10 in the morning.
10 in the morning. Hasta la vista.
Okay.
Cheers.